Welcome back, Charlotte. How are you?
Good evening, Jeff. I'm fine, thank you. And I've been watching tennis. I just have to do that
Doesn't
occasionally.
it make your neck sore,
Well,
turning your head back and forth?
I just get tired of watching Obama.
Well, I'd rather watch tennis. I
You're not
agree.
kidding. I really come to the conclusion that at least there seems to be some discipline on the court, and
Quite.
you're winners and losers.
Yeah.
And you can't fool around, and you have to you have to play the game the way it is.
And there are no teleprompters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so disgusted with what's going on in Washington, but I mean, really, they didn't expect me to say anything else.
You want to see Obama, folks, you can get the old newsreels of Mussolini out and just
Oh
turn the
yeah,
sound off and you'll see the same thing.
oh, he makes me so sick. But you know what I really would like to do tonight, in case you haven't done this, have you read this letter from this black professor? And
Oh, in pieces I did, yes. Gates was his name?
this is a good one. This is Ann Wortham.
Oh, no. I
It's
don't know this one.
associate professor of. I think this is worth reading to your listeners.
Let's do
if
it.
I can.
Please.
I am so happy about this because what I see with Obama and with, as you were just talking about, Gates and all of his associates and his mentors and his whole upbringing and his whole philosophy and his whole takeover of the corporations, his takeover of our children, and just go on and on. I don't want the American people. I truly hope the American people do not believe that he represents the majority of blacks in this country, because he doesn't. And he would like everybody to think that, and the radical blacks would want everyone to think that they represent black America, and they don't. And this woman, I can't say that. You see, when I say something like this, when I talk about Obama, I'm anti-black. I'm a racist. I'm this. I'm that. Now, this is just marvelous, folks, and I hope that you will go on the internet and just type her name in, because you'll get this speech that she made. You can read it and you can print it out and you can pass it out, and nobody can say you are a racist, because this is written by a very prominent black educator. And her name is Ann Wortham, and she's associate professor of sociology at Illinois State University and continuing visiting scholar at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. She is a member of the American Sociological Association and the American Philosophical Association. She has been a John Olin Foundation Faculty Fellow and honored as a Distinguished Alumni of the Year by the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education. In fall 1988, she was one of a select group of intellectuals who were featured in Bill Moyer's TV series, A World of Ideas. The transcript of her conversation with Moyers has been published in his book, A World of Ideas. Dr. Wortham is author of, I want to get this book too, it must be very good, The Other Side of Racism, a philosophical study of black race consciousness, which analyzes how race consciousness is transformed into political strategies and policy issues. She has published numerous articles on the implications of individual rights for civil rights policy and is currently writing a book on theories of social and cultural marginality. Recently, she has published articles on the significance of multiculturalism and Afrocentrism in education, the politics of victimization, and the social and political impact of political correctness. Shortly after an interview in 2004, she was awarded tenure. This article by her is something. And here we go. Fellow Americans, please know I am black. I grew up in the segregated South. I did not vote for Barack Obama. I wrote in Ron Paul's name as my choice for president. Most importantly, I am not race conscious. I do not require a black president to know that I am a person of worth and that life is worth living. I do not require a black president to love the ideal of America. I cannot join in your celebration. I feel no elation. There is no smile on my face. I am not jumping with joy. There are no tears of triumph in my eyes. For such emotions and behavior to come from me, I would have to deny all that I know about the requirements of human flourishing and survival. All that I know about the history of the United States of America, all that I know about American race relations, and all that I know about Barack Obama as a politician. I would have to deny the nature of the, in quotes, change that Obama asserts has come to America. Most importantly, I would have to abnegate my certain understanding that you have chosen to sprint down the road to serfdom that we have been on for over a century. I would have to pretend that individual liberty has no value for the success of a human life. I would have to evade your rejection of the slender reed of capitalism on which your success and mine depend. I would have to think it somehow rational that 94% of the 12 million blacks in this country voted for a man because he looks like them, in parenthesis, that blacks are permitted to play the race card, in parenthesis, and that they were joined by self-declared progressive, in quotes, whites who voted for him because he doesn't look like them. I would have to wipe my mind clean all that I know about the kind of people who have advised and taught Barack Obama and will fill posts in his administration.
Yep.
Political intellectuals like my former colleagues at the Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. I would have to believe that fairness, in quotes, is equivalent of justice. I would have to believe that a man who asked me to, quote, go forward in a new spirit of service, in a new service of sacrifice, end quotes, is speaking in my interest. I would have to accept the premise of a man that economic prosperity comes from the bottom up, and who arrogantly believes that he can will it into existence by the use of government force. I would have to admire a man who thinks the standard of living of the masses can be improved by destroying the most productive and the generators of wealth. Finally, Americans, I would have to erase from my consciousness the scene of 125,000 screaming, crying, cheering people in Grant Park, Chicago, irrationally chanting, "Yes, we can," in quotes. Finally, I would have to wipe all memory of all the times I have heard politicians, pundits, journalists, editorialists, bloggers, and intellectuals declare that capitalism is dead. And no one, including especially Alan Greenspan, objected to their assumption that the particular version of the anti-capitalistic mentality that they want to replace with their own version of anti-capitalism is anything remotely equivalent to capitalism. So you have made history, Americans. You and your children have elected a black man to the office of the President of the United States, the wounded giant of the world. The battle between John Wayne and Jane Fonda is over, and Fonda won. Eugene McCarthy and George McGovern must be very happy men. Jimmy Carter, too, and the Kennedys have at last gotten their Kennedy look-alike. The self-righteous welfare status in the suburbs can feel warm moments of satisfaction for having elected a black person. So toast yourselves, 60s countercultural radicals, 80s yuppies, and 90s bourgeois bohemians. Toast yourselves, Black America. Shout your glee, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Duke, Stanford, and Berkeley. You have elected not an individual who is qualified to be president, but a black man who, like the pragmatist Franklin Roosevelt, promises to do something. You now have someone who has picked up the baton of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, but you have also foolishly traded your freedom and mine, what little there is left, for the chance to feel good. There is nothing in me that can share your happy obliviousness. God help us all.
God, what a great, that would have been a great speech. It's a great statement. It's a great paper. That's a great human being. I am personally colorblind when it comes to brilliant, unbiased intellectual competence and insight, and that woman, whoever it is absolutely, it doesn't get any better. She just told it totally on the... Yeah.
And your listeners can look her up. Her name is unusual spelling. It's Anne, A-N-N-E, and the last name is Wortham, W-O-R-T-H-A-M.
Well, it's like Wortham.
Yep, Wortham. And her book is it's called The Other Side of Racism, a philosophical study of black race consciousness. So I suggest people get on the internet and track her down and spread the word in regard to this this unbelievable
I need to
speech.
get her on the program. If you do contact her, extend an invitation. I'll work on her from this end as well.
Yeah, you try to, because I'd like to know where I can find her. I'm going to try to find her too, Jeff, and I will do what I can. But
Thank you.
try too, because
Yeah, I will.
she should get out there.
No, what a great woman. Great American. Spoken brilliantly. It doesn't get any better.
Gutsy, huh?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, the truth.
When she can do it, we can't.
You bet. Be right back. And just intellectual brilliance. Why aren't you colorblind all the time? Because I'm not colorblind to racism, whether it be from browns, Asians, blacks, whites. So let's get that straight. Okay. Go ahead, Charlotte, please.
Well, no, I'm glad we were able to get that magnificent speech out there for people, because what I see now is a very tremendous intention amongst the radical blacks in this country. They're being used. I mean, we know where they've been used for years. I mean, the communists have been providing money for those groups for years, and the federal government has been providing money as well. The purpose is to divide and conquer. And,
always.
And actually, what is very interesting here, and I was on another talk show the other night, and I remember clearly. There was a great woman. I think she died about 10 years ago. Her name was Edith Kermit Roosevelt. You may have read some of her articles.
Yeah.
She was down in Louisiana, and she had two brothers, Kim and the other brother. I can't remember his first name, Roosevelt. And she was a granddaughter, I believe, of Teddy Roosevelt. And she was a great writer, and she had access to highly classified materials through her brothers. And I have a lot of her articles stashed away. Someday I really ought to get them out. They ought to be republished. But she got a hold of some information in regard to a group of some sort of a tax-exempt foundation that was doing a study of the American people, basically, and broken down by the three groups: Anglo-Saxon, Catholics, and blacks, right? And they did the study to find out how patriotic they were, how religious they were, and how globalist they were, right? And the results were very interesting, because people seem to forget the role that the blacks have played in this country throughout history, in the wars, dying in wars. They were even in the Revolutionary War. And, they just think in terms of them being, slaves brought over here. They think of the Civil War. They don't think, they think in terms of civil rights and all, but they don't really think in terms of what blacks have done and their character. And this study showed that what they were doing is you find out where people are coming from, and then you can change them, right? That's what they do in the schools, too. It's called a needs assessment. And so they found out the blacks were the most patriotic, which is very interesting. The Catholics were the most religious, and the Anglo-Saxons were the traitors, the ones who are globalists, huh? And so I think that was probably in the late 60s. A tremendous effort has been made, the foundations, tax-exempt foundations, government, et cetera, to infiltrate the black community and to drag them away from that feeling of love of country.
Right.
And we've seen this. We've allowed it to happen. We watch it. We see it on the TV every night. It
all the time.
Just makes me so mad. And that is why I find this statement, this brilliant statement, very gutsy. I mean, truly.
Charlotte, you just summed it up. What happened to America's black population beginning in the 1960s, and then there was the TV series Roots and all that. Was to pry them away and really, in a way, I think, take from them their love of country ethic, the whole idea of love of country, turning it into love of self, love of heritage, love of genetics.
Yes.
And they lost it at that point.
Absolutely. And they have been experimented on. I mean, I could go on and on.
Well, of course, look at the Tuskegee experiment just for openers. Come on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, for people who really want to know to get the proof on what they did in education. I wrote an article. It's on my website, deliberatedumbingdown.com, and it's listed under. There's some PDFs that are very easy to access, and you can copy them and show them to people. All that. But this was an article I wrote on experimentation on the minorities in education. And it's very clear. They use them. I'm talking about children in early elementary school and all. They were used as the guinea pigs for outcomes-based education. The Skinner method, the Pavlov's method that I talk about all the time, that your listeners probably get very tired of hearing about.
No, it's crucial. Don't ever think that.
Was first used on them and used in special ed classes. Was used on minorities, not just the blacks and whatever you want to call them, Afro-Americans. People don't call me Scotch-Irish. I don't know why they should, I don't know why I have to call blacks African-Americans. I really don't, because people don't call me Scotch-Irish.
See, they had it. They had it. They had it moving the right way. They were thinking they were Americans. We're all Americans. Now that's all been split into pieces.
That's exactly it. They're Americans. Right. But anyway, these programs, there was one program in particular, and that is actually, I put that that's in the appendix to my book. And the paper was written by Brian Rowan, who was a top behaviorist who worked with, this is going back a few years, your listeners don't remember probably the outcome-based education grant that went all over the country, the one I leaked. That went to William Spady, Far West Laboratory. It was a grant that said we're going to put outcome-based education in every school in the nation. Yep. Now, that was really a shocker because the federal government's not meant to do that, but it does it all the time. That's why our kids are dumbed down. But this particular grant, the guy who worked with Spady on it, Brian Rowan.
Charlotte, hold that thought, please. Okay. We have to pause. We'll pick it up right there.
I was talking about experimental pilot programs that were used on the minorities, not just blacks, but Hispanics as well. But mostly because I'm going back to the 60s, mostly the black community. And, as a result of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, they decided to use the dog training method rather than using sticking with the old classical form of education where children have to learn facts and figures and study and understand literature and history and science and art and all that stuff, right? They changed education from what you can, how you think and what you know to what you can do, how you can perform, like a pigeon, right? As Skinner said, I could make a pigeon a high achiever by reinforcing it on a proper schedule. Folks, if you think that's not what's in the schools now, just listen to the new superintendent or commissioner of education or secretary of education, Orrin Duncan, under Obama, who is now, he recommends paying them money for good grades. Well, that's the same thing as Skinner, right?
Exactly.
Giving the ticket.
Oh, absolutely. Of course.
Absolutely. So anyway, this change took place in 1965.
And we might add, excuse me, Charlotte, just to elaborate just a bit on that, getting good grades according to the curricula imposed upon these students, not according to true knowledge-seeking and individual development and personal achievement. No, responding to the game as it has been crafted and created for the student to participate in, and then they get paid for it. So it's stacked all the way.
It's horrible. Anyway, talking about total proof, we did put this whole paper in my book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, we didn't cut it at all because we didn't want anybody to say that we were, just putting in stuff to make our own points. It was by this professor, Brian Rowan, very high up. He worked with the top guy who put outcomes-based education into the whole country. And I had that grant, and this was in the early 80s, so I got a hold of the grant. And I found a paper that this professor had written on, it was called Shamanistic Rituals. Right? In effective schools with an E. When you see that EFF.
Shamanistic rituals in effective schools?
Yes, and effective is, that word means, that means Skinner.
Sure.
Effective, because it works, right?
Yep,
yes.
Yep.
If you give your dog will sit if you give him a dog biscuit. So anyway, it was shamanistic rituals. That it intrigued me because this is magic, right? So they think they're performing magic, and actually it is sort of like magic because nothing that they do in the classroom really works. I mean, they fool people. And he said right there, we can con the parents into believing, this is an inner city school, into believing that their children are doing well by manipulating demographic statistics. And so when you see this stuff, what I'm trying to say here is that there's been a massive attack, interestingly enough, on the black community. And now I suppose it's all minorities, but many people don't realize that. They feel that the civil rights movement was there to help them. Mm-hmm. And in so many ways, with urban renewal, the education programs, the breaking up of the black families, etc., I see only the opposite.
I'm not going to argue with you at all. You're right.
And, of course, they've been doing it to all of us as well, but they used the minorities to experiment to see if the programs worked. And by work, that means dumb down.
Yeah, of course.
And
absolutely.
Create moral and
it's really like shooting
academic
fish.
Chaos.
It's shooting fish in a barrel to these people. They're past masters of it, and they have supercomputer models to work from. They've been planning this for 100 years and then some. It's all documented in Charlotte's book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. All of it. One of the most important books, literally, of our age.
Well, a lot of people helped me with that book. I have to give credit to the editor and the publisher, and then some great educators who helped me.
All right, you were the one who drove the U-Haul truck back.
Well, I did, and I was the one. The interesting thing is, people always say, "Would you ever write another book?" And no, I really don't want to do that. But the most difficult part, even more than the 30 years of research and then putting it together, was marketing it. That really is a lot of work. It's not as much the intellectual.
I remember when it came out. You were right here on this program. I remember.
Yeah, that's right. I've been with you for many, many years, Jeff, and you've been very helpful in marketing it. But the marketing it and packing books and shipping them myself and all because that I did that, and that's the only way you can make any money. I mean, you can't if you have a publisher, you don't make any money at all. But anyway, yes,
you got that right too. Let me say one thing to all you people out there. I am amazed, Charlotte, not to get off subject here, at the endless stream of books that come out that are sent to me, paperback books, knowing full well that virtually none of them are ever going to turn a penny profit for the author, okay? The author. Maybe the publisher, but not the author.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I did make some money on my book, but that was simply because I did everything myself.
I understand.
I had a publisher, and these were gals. That's why I like to mention them. These were brilliant moms, huh? Mm-hmm. And one was a former teacher, and the other one was just plain brilliant, and the editor. And we three did it together. And then after we started making some money on it, I paid them, but nowhere near what a publisher would have gotten.
Got it. Sure.
So anyway, it is true that what we're looking at today, and I don't even know that when I wrote the book and used the word deliberate, I knew something was terribly wrong. I knew that I was correct that was a deliberate dumbing down, but I honestly did not. I couldn't envision what has happened just in that short period of time since the book came out. I mean, there is no reason I can find for this apathy, this acceptance of totalitarian measures, this pathetic behavior of the American people, which can be other than miseducation. There's only one reason, and it's the schools.
I agree.
And the media, but mainly the schools.
Oh, sure it is.
The schools, the children have to go to school. They're captive.
It's the baseline rudimentary manifesto of how communism makes its way into a society and controls it through,
That's right.
through the
And
children.
they've been highly successful. They have right now a population that hasn't the faintest idea that it is following the communist line.
No, it's like a different...
Because it doesn't know what communism is.
They don't know, and because of the label game and many other things. Hang on, we have to pause. We'll be right back. Bring us to this point right now where our young people, Charlotte, literally, I don't know if we can call them stupid because they've never had a chance to develop.
No.
They've been created in this light of ignorance,
right,
of absolute intellectual inactivity in many cases, with a vocabulary of maybe 500 words. That's all they need.
Mm-hmm.
And they are almost penalized into oblivion by their peer groups if they do succeed on an independent or individual basis. It's all about the hive, all about the herd, all about the flock, and if you step out of the line, out of anywhere on the line, you're going to get your butt kicked, and that's what they do. And anybody who's had young people knows this is absolutely true. It is withering the pressure on young people now to conform to less than mediocrity. It's almost as if we have a different species, a subspecies of human being coming up now. You cannot awaken an intellect that has been stillborn.
Yeah. No, Jeff, you always put it very well. I mean, I think you're almost more upset about it than I am, but I just think, I don't know if anybody can be, but you express it very well. I mean, it's a tragedy. They have been victimized, the children and the parents. Of course, we have had several generations of this. So it's not just the children. The parents haven't gotten any education either, and their parents too. We're getting into third and fourth generation.
This is
now.
not the first generation, is what she's stating very articulately.
No.
We're into our third generation of idiocy. And,
and total no right, no wrong, no courtesy,
no accountability, folks.
No manners.
No manners, no accountability, no responsibility,
right.
Nothing. It's
No.
live for the moment, live for the next giggle, the next laugh, the next good time, the next drug party, the next sexual encounter, whatever.
Oh, it's horrible, and they can't speak properly. I mean, they can't even speak, forget the properly. And they can't write.
No.
Surely they don't read.
They can't write, they can't read.
They can operate in a crowd.
No.
They're just perfect for Obama, to be his little followers. And honestly, you can take a country. You don't need tanks, and I've said that in my book. You don't need tanks and airplanes and bombs and everything. And we know that. I mean, they were never going to use the tanks and the airplanes and bombs. So they just had to fool us. They kept us thinking about tanks, airplanes, bombs at the same time that they were doing the real war.
Right.
Was going on in the classrooms.
Sure.
And
now they've got us by oil, and if they really want to control us, they simply cut off the food supply. And we line up and we do backflips, forward rolls, somersaults. We sit, we stay, we speak, we bark, we do it all.
Well, yeah, I'd like. Sometimes I think the only way you can get these people to face up to what they've done, if in fact they don't know what they've done, is just read them all, the tenets of the Communist Manifesto. Read them off to them, and ask them if that isn't what we have now in the United States.
And you want to read the mechanism by way much of this has been instilled and entrenched into what's left of our culture.
Right.
Whoever wrote it, whether it's a fraud or not, I don't really care. Read the protocols.
Oh, yeah.
Of the techniques are all there, ladies and gentlemen. The perfect game plan to achieve what's been done. The protocols of the learned elders of Zion.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's all there, and people will question you and say,
you're this, you're that. It doesn't matter, folks. Read the document. Think for yourself.
Because someone must have written it, and regardless of what group you can associate with, it's true. Everything there has happened.
Yep.
And so, and we go blindly along. We really do. The merger, which Norman Dodd was told about during the hearings, the tax-exempt foundation hearings, he was told by he was the research director for this congressional hearing in 1953 to investigate the tax-exempt foundations and how they were spending their money to make a socialist America. And he was told by the president of the Ford Foundation that the foundations got their instructions from the White House. And the instructions were to use their money to change America so it could be comfortably merged with the Soviet Union. Now, basically, everybody's going to say, well, there's no Soviet. Yeah, that's right. They're not necessarily. But what they were saying right there was can be merged with communism. And that's international socialism, which is what we're looking at, the implementation of the North American Union. The European Union is the oldest one, started out with a common market. And so, this is communism, folks. These unions that are being set up, these regional entities, regionalism is communism. So what we're putting in now and what you're looking at every day, what's going on in your local town council, your regional councils, etc., and on an international level, because now they have the International Union of Local Authorities, where your selectmen and all, did you know this, and your police are going and having meetings abroad in different countries under UN auspices. So, and you've got the FBI, Louis Freeh, way back under Clinton, went to Moscow and signed an agreement with the KGB. Merged the two. So I'm just pulling out a few facts for you to ponder. Because it's later than you think. We're on borrowed time.
It's so much later than you think. It's really over. It's over for now.
And here we have Obama flying. I understand from Chuck Baldwin that maybe they're going to fly it somewhere else, maybe in the basement, hopefully, flying the People's Republic of China's flag at the White House.
Well, they got. It's not the only one. Obama's campaign headquarters had Che Guevara on the wall, a portrait of him. They've got the Israeli flag. They might as well have the People's Republic flag. Yeah, it's obvious. Think of the technology the Clintons sold wholesale to the Chinese. I mean, it goes back. This is not just Obama, who is just the most despicable example of it.
Do you think it's fluoride? Maybe we can blame it on fluoride.
It could be many things. There are so many toxins in the foods now, Charlotte, that are probably far more insidious than fluoride. They're so capable of creating things that can do much more than fluoride does. Fluoride is just kind of a benchmark upon which many other things reside.
But doesn't it sort of dull
it destroys the part of the brain that creates initiative and territorial imperative and defense.
Yeah, I know.
You no longer care about your space.
Exactly, but I think that's our problem is the American people. There is nothing. I can't imagine anything that is going to wake them up, except, you know what, the healthcare thing did get those retired Americans who are on the golf courses.
Yeah, well, another 10 years, they won't be a factor, right?
No, but they heard all about this end-of-life counseling.
Yeah.
And they got off the golf course and went to a town meeting.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, but you're right. All they have to do is wait a little longer. Time is on their side. That's communism.
Be gone. I mean, really, that's a matter of 10 years max, probably.
And they won't be a factor. They'll still be around, but they won't be up yelling and screaming like they were. This was a kind of a last twitch. I just, as long as they maintain control and they own the media and they own the professions and they own the schools and they own the economy and they own the finances and they own the politicians, what the hell do they have to worry about?
I know. They own us, and we don't own anything. We don't even own our property. I just found out today that part of my property has been designated as archaeologically significant.
Oh, they finally did that? They went ahead with that?
Yeah, sorry. I told you the last time around. Yeah. Yes, they evidently they can do that. There's no such thing as grandfathering anymore.
No, and if you think you own your property, folks, just stop paying your property tax for a while and see how long you own it.
That's right. Exactly. But anyway, land control, mind control.
Communitarianism. It's working its way into all local city councils, county government. They got their agents out. Nikki Rapana has written about this brilliantly.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, she's a great gal.
Well, I mean, that last article she wrote was just fabulous. I mean, she has such an excellent, really good understanding, and she came into that a little bit, rather, I would say, because I've been in so long, rather late in the game. And
she did. It was in Seattle in a Park District move. They were hiding it under a Park District issue, and she found out about it. She figured it out.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing what the work that she's done. But, so often we talk to one another, we call it talking to the choir, and to get the information out, because we just don't have the major media. We don't have that horrible...
No.
I know that
we've got the internet, which is so penetrated, so corrupted, and so tainted with these people and their agendas and disinformation agents everywhere. It's difficult for even people who are astute mentally to walk into that and come away without at least feeling fatigued. If nothing else.
It's really true. I mean, even I have been around a long time, and I've become so, I don't trust anybody anymore, no matter how good I think they are. Sometimes I just jokingly say I look myself in the mirror, and I have to question whether I'm really what I really think I am. Huh?
Well, we're living in a world that is so different than what it was 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of the problem. Our references, our touchstones are not there anymore, and it is easy to begin to ask. Yes. All right. Thank you, Charlotte, so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Trillions of dollars, literally. All they have to do is tap into those or make them accessible somehow, and the problems go away. But they're not about to do that because that's their nest egg. At any rate, the idea of education being made better by money, we should know by now, is one of the biggest lies in our contemporary history. And when we think about education, I always do, and I'm sure many of you do, think about the work of the impeccable and brilliant Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt and her classic book, which exposed the whole thing, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. I wonder how much lower we can go. Dumb is really getting down there now. I think it's 70% of high school graduates are functionally illiterate. I mean, just astonishing. Remember, no child left behind. Astonishing statistics. If you have any doubt about the fact that there is a communist or two, and Mrs. Obama, in the White House, it should have long since gone. That doubt should have vaporized. This man is a joke. And remember, the difference between a socialist and a communist is that the communist is in a hurry. That's what they're doing, and they are really in a hurry. Charlotte, are you there?
Yes, Jeff, I am here, and I couldn't agree more. And I thought that the most, for how long have we been trying to think of things to do to turn this thing around, and never been very successful. But I truly believe that Victoria, whatever her last name is, Saturday Night Live, I think we've got to use her fantastic song, There's a Communist in the White House.
Oh, someone sent that to me. I saw it, yeah. Yes,
and I think that if all your listeners just Google it and send it to everybody they know, that might do more than anything else I can possibly think of, because I've been trying my best for 25 years to tell the American people that it's not just Obama that's the communist in the White House.
No, of course not.
We've had others who, some were so dumb they didn't know they were. Others weren't so dumb and knew they were. But we've had this going on, Jeff, we go all the way back to really Woodrow Wilson.
Well, and let's
we
not
go
forget...
back to the Carnegie Corporation, and which has consistently through the years, tax-exempt foundation, implemented the communist system in the schools, okay? And that is in my book, and I would like to make one point that an extraordinarily important document is at my son's website, AmericanDeception.com, and that is, the document is called Report on the Social Studies. You have to look up report. Just type in report into the search engine at AmericanDeception.com, and it should pop up. It's called Report on the Commission for the Social Studies, and it was published by the American Historical Association paid for by Carnegie Corporation in 1934. And that document was considered by a British socialist by the name of Lasky to be a plan for a socialist America. It's extraordinary. It's a small book. I don't believe there is any copy anywhere in the world except the one I had that is up on that website. And it explains exactly what the plans of the Carnegie Corporation were back then in the early 30s to implement socialism in the United States through the schools. And it points out that the American people are not going to be too happy about some of these techniques and programs that will seem to them to take their freedoms away. Please, folks, go to AmericanDeception.com and find that report and copy it and send it to people. Because there's no question in my mind, none whatsoever, and certainly the last year has reinforced it, that we have implemented in this country communism, not socialism, let's call it what it is. It is communism.
Yes, it is.
And William Foster, the chairman of the Communist Party in 1930, he wrote a very important little book that the Communist Party loves to say doesn't exist, called Toward a Soviet America. And every single thing, now that Obama is nationalizing the economy, right, every single thing that he called for, including the United States Department of Education, including the use of the Pavlovian method in the schools, including getting rid of religion, including school to work, including everything, including communitarianism, including everything coming under the umbrella of the school district. That will be lifelong control of every citizen in the United States. That used to be called community education. Probably got a new name for it now. That's being called for by Secretary of Education Aaron Duncan and Gordon Brown in the UK.
Uh-huh.
They came out last November and called for community education. Now, at AmericanDeception.com, you also can type in the word FELD, F-E-L-D, and you'll find a brilliant critique, study of what community education really is. And it is, in a nutshell, but it's very important for you to see the documents, it is a plan to put all services, everything from taking grandma to look at the leaves in the autumn, to an abortion clinic, euthanasia, school to work, under the umbrella of the school district.
Really?
And that's why we have these huge Taj Mahals going up all over the place. So you will be totally controlled, lifelong, out of the UN. So all I can say, I could go into a lot more, like the United States-Soviet Education Agreement signed by Reagan and Gorbachev, just recently the China People's Republic of China, United States Education Agreement last year.
Nobody hears about any of these things, of course. They don't know anything. Nothing. You don't hear about it.
But you know what? You know what the problem is? I'm talking to myself. The average American doesn't even know what communism is.
I know the feeling. As many as I get to, it's not even visible on the radar. You're right.
But, let's look at it this way. Maybe the people are waking up, the Tea Party movement, this and that. I don't know, but one thing, we may look back in retrospect and say Obama was the best thing that ever happened. Because come November, the American people may be very upset right now. Who knows what's going on in their pathetic little heads? They may turn the Congress on its head. Let's pray for that, do everything possible to have that happen. And then it would have been, then the period that we had this, whatever we want to call him in the White House, will, in retrospect, have been a blessing.
If they do that. If they don't, if they return 94% like they did after the original bailout money, back to the House, they'll deserve what they get. We cannot think two-party system.
Keep doing it. How you keep doing your radio program, I don't know. How you have the motivation and the energy, a lot younger than I am. I don't know. I mean, I get so tired of listening to myself. I really do. I mean, I'm just fed up with myself. I'm
Charlotte,
so tired of the same old message.
Nevertheless,
I'm so tired of seeing. I want to be wrong.
Yeah.
I'm tired of finding out I'm right.
Boy, I agree with. There's a profound statement. I concur. You've never been more acerbic, correct, intellectually adroit, and adept with your words and descriptions about what's going on. Never. You are at your very peak now. And if you go to AmericanDeception.com and just type in report, it's about a third the way down the page. You will find it there. And it's a download PDF. It says, Senate investigating... No, that isn't it. Hold on. Report on the Commission on Social Studies. Report on the Commission on Social Studies. It's a PDF download. AmericanDeception.com.
Good for you.
Yeah, well, good grief. By the way...
Good grief, you're not kidding. Go
when
ahead.
we look back and we look at the names, and we look at the names in your book, and we look at the names in the history book, the real history book, it's too bad more of the names aren't Roman Catholic or East Indian or Hindus or Buddhists or Methodists. They're Jewish Zionist names. It's not all Jews. These are Jewish Zionists. You said Lasky a little, I think it was Lasky. But here's another in a succession of Bolshevik Jewish Zionists.
Right.
And they continue to this day to have their hands clutched around the throat of what's left of Lady Liberty. Look at the names. Just look at the names and understand that these people are 0.2% of the world population. Okay? Is this a conspiracy? Of course it is. The world's run by a conspiracy. And now let's go back and drop a name that many of our younger listeners have never heard. Senator Joseph McCarthy. For all of his faults, Joe McCarthy knew what was coming.
Yep.
He knew. And he has been vilified by the Zionist media ever since, as has anyone else who questions the agenda of the American Bolshevik Zionist movement, which is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And they have, I forgot who, maybe it was Castro who mouthed it, but it's been said for a long time. Maybe it was Lenin. Forget about the adults. Just give me 2 generations of children. All it takes is 30 years.
Well, that's absolutely. I mean, you can take a country through the schools. And that's why I found it interesting when the Carnegie, that little book I talked about earlier, that it was called the Report on the Commission on the Social Studies. And who would really think that would be such a very important report? It was almost like Mein Kampf, that little book. Because it talks about how they're going to completely change the system of government in the United States.
See,
I want to mention, before I forget, Jeff, that my book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, is now, I'm selling it at my website at cost. It's half price. I'm even including the shipping in it because I want it to get out to as many people as possible to help try to save what's left of this country's magnificent system of government for our children to inherit this. So people will go to that website, deliberatedumbingdown.com, or they can call me also. And I'm going to give my number. I don't like to do it particularly, but you can call and pay with a credit card. It's 207-737-4730. And if I don't answer, just leave a message for me to call you back, and I will call you back. Now, what I want to talk about here is how did this happen? How did it happen? How did this country get to the point where it really is a communist country right now, whether we're Chinese communism or Soviet communism or Korean or Cuban? It doesn't make any difference. because it's all totalitarian, and we will no longer have our way of life as we have known it in the United States of America. How did it happen? It really is amazing how it could have happened. But it happened because we have been fighting. We have had a very interesting enemy. We've had the real enemy on the left that we know about, and then we've had another enemy that is even far more dangerous, and that has been the right. The controlled conservative movement has, as long as I have been around working, like from certainly the early 70s, and I didn't know this at that time, the conservative movement was infiltrated. And we've ended up with the leadership of the movement, for instance, the Heritage Foundation, which is going to be moving out into the states in an even more important activity than it has had in the past in the states, to absolutely take complete control of whatever patriots exist. And let me give you a little information about them. It's very upsetting. They pretend that they are for our Republican form of government and sovereignty. They're not. Richard Allen, who worked for President Reagan in the White House, and I remember people who were a little bit older than, or they're not my age, probably a little younger than I am, but they must remember he was fired from the White House because he accepted a watch from the Japanese. Richard Allen went to work for the Heritage Foundation.
A watch.
He wrote the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So does that tell you, folks, how really sovereignty, pro-sovereignty, the Heritage Foundation is? When Ronald Reagan signed the agreements with Gorbachev to merge the two education systems, the Heritage Foundation was totally in favor of it. And Edwin Fulner, in fact, came out and spoke very favorably about this. And they even set up an office in Moscow after that happened.
Very good. Stand by, Charlotte. We have to pause just for a minute. Let's also remember the agree or disagree with him, the integrity. That means belief in principle of Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh's speech is amazing. Many of them. There were some really far-seeing, open-minded, open-eyed Americans. Not many around anymore. Charlotte is one of those, and we're honored to have her with us as always. Be right back, gang, in just a couple. Okay, and welcome back. Talking with Charlotte Iserbyt. Her book being sold at cost. At cost. Okay, I'm sure she'll autograph it for you. She even gave you her phone number. Call her tomorrow. Leave a message if she's not there. She'll call you back. The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America, an absolute classic of our time, our age, and probably of all time. 700 and some pages. It's all there. The documentation, the studies, the text, the prose, the citations, the references, it's all there. How the entire school system, the curriculum, and all of it, all the curricula, were completely retooled over time to reflect the machine that we now call the government school system, the government education system, which turns out morons, sheep, hive members, and non-thinking, collectivist group thinkers. They don't think independently. They don't encourage any longer the success of the individual. That's considered selfish and weird and outside the group. It's all about the hive. And this has been in the works for a long time. Nothing new. But people like Ford, Lindbergh, and others knew Joe McCarthy knew. Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt knew. She saw it. She saw it from the inside. It's right there. And I said earlier on tonight that some of the agreements that have been signed, we never hear about. I never hear about them unless I talk to Charlotte. They're buried, and by design, it doesn't just disappear. It happens. Go ahead, please.
Well, I'd like to go to the problem. This never would have happened if the conservative movement had remained truly conservative and Americanist, but it was infiltrated and completely taken over by the neoconservatives, whose agenda is the same as the agenda of the left.
I see the same kind of thing happening, Charlotte.
To the very important book by Carol Quigley,
that's another one.
Clinton's mentor at Georgetown University. Bill Clinton had high regard for Quigley. Quigley was the historian, official historian for the Council on Foreign Relations. And in his book, Tragedy and Hope, he very clearly spells out what happened in regard to both parties having the same agenda. The Republicans and the Democrats at the top are the same. And he pointed out that in the late 1800s, the industrialists got together, they met, and they said that they would have to set it up so that both parties had the same agenda. And when the American people went to the polls, they'd think they were getting what they wanted, but they would actually be getting what the insiders, those who support world government, corporate, fascist, communist, socialist system, give it any name you want, they would get what they want. And that's exactly what we have now. Both parties are controlled at the top, and it's very difficult for any good American to get nominated, in the primaries, to get nominated. It's just about impossible. So that is why we have such problems in the Congress getting anything done that reflects what the American people really want. But the people continue to believe that there is a difference in the parties, and there just isn't. No. I mean, there are there are a few congressmen and senators left, very few, who really do reflect the views of their constituents. And anyway, I'd like to just point out that about 15 years ago, Rosalind Haley, who was a great American from Texas, she was part of the Crest family, and she belonged to the Council for National Policy. That is the major right-wing part of this conspiracy. And the Council for National Policy, you have all the major conservative organizations come under the Council for National Policy. And Roz was a member. She did not realize at the time the incredible control that the Council for National Policy had in regard to moving us towards world government. And she and I had a little idea to have a postcard project where we're going to, dump postcards all over the country in regard to getting out of the United Nations, because that is basically the problem. That's where everything comes from, all the treaties, all the regulations, all the different environmental groups, sustainable development, the international education system, you name it, it comes out of the UN. So my idea was that we'd have these little cards. We'd carry them at all times. Everybody would have about 1,000 or so. You keep reprinting them, put them in Christmas cards, greeting cards on the bulletin board at the hardware store, church, supermarket, everywhere. Support legislation. At that time, as well, Yarber from Florida had the bill, and now Ron Paul has it. We could still do this, right? But anyway, we're going to have this project and get people to contact their congressman, give them the numbers, give them the website in regard to getting out of the UN. And so we sent a letter to 300 members of the Council for National Policy. Ross signed it. I didn't, because that would have been the kiss of death, because they hate me because I went up against Reagan over the U.S.-Soviet education agreement. So I did not sign that letter. Ross signed it. Well, and it was in a big brown envelope, 300 envelopes. My son took all the names of the members off of the internet, got their addresses, and we sent out 300 envelopes to the members. These are top people, top businessmen, members of conservative organizations, etc. You want to know how many responses we got?
5.
1. 1. Now, the reason I tell this story is I hope your listeners are going to understand that the conservative movement in the United States of America is virtually dead as far as what our desires are concerned, because it is implementing, its goals are the same as the left.
I agree.
So
it's amazing.
Spending your money to these people.
Yeah. Oh,
these
please.
are different groups. I'm not going to name all of them. I think you must know who they are. It's not that there aren't some good people there, and there still are, and I know them. The majority of them absolutely detest me, well, for good reason, right? Because you can imagine. I mean, when they hear me on the radio like this, they're not going to like it very much, and I'm sure the word will get out. But anyway, when I tried to expose the United States-Soviet education agreements and human events that I had written for in the past, it was a good journal up until about 25 years ago. When Tom Wiener told me he couldn't publish the article on the U.S.-Soviet education agreement, which the Bangor Daily News had published. In other words, the lobstermen in Maine understood what I was trying to say about merging, but Human Events told me their listeners wouldn't understand.
Right. All right, hold on.
They're readers, Human Events readers, who are supposed to be conservatives, huh?
Right.
They would not understand what I was saying.
All right, hold on, Charlotte.
Reagan had signed an agreement with Gorbachev to merge the two education systems.
I heard it from you first. Stand by. I'll be right back with Charlotte in just a couple minutes. Hang on. Okay, and we're back talking with Charlotte about the end of America as we knew it. And if you think these people are going to somehow be defeated easily and give up and fold their tents, you better think again. It's been my view for a long time that the point of no return has come and gone years and years ago, that this plan has been so well thought out and they are so ruthless that there's really nothing much to do about it. We know we've lost the ability to vote them out unless something amazing happens that is truly off the radar. These people will take everything down with them rather than give up their stranglehold on your lives, on your freedom. They thrive on greed and dominance and subjugation, and that's what the game is about. So it's a tough time. But when you look at the stats of the last election after the theft bailout, and 94% of those who voted for it got sent back to the House, you know there's some vote fraud. We know that. Yeah. But in Texas, in one particular area, the primary, all of the crooks got put back in through their primaries to run again for another 2-year term. You don't get to run unless you pass Zionist muster. You won't have any money. They make the money available. They turn on the tap. They turn the tap off. This country is really a cash cow for a regime headquartered in the city of London, and which has emanated from Britain, I guess, from the beginning, Charlotte. It goes way back.
Absolutely. And you know, when you're talking about how if you're really good, you can't win, I think back to, I think it's before your time, Jeff, when John Ashbrook from Ohio was a wonderful congressman. I dedicated my book to him. I knew him in the early 70s. There's some marvelous transcript of his speeches in the Congress in regard to the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. and how it was a terrible bill, shouldn't pass, and that it was going to, it called for the internationalization of American education, basically. Ashbrook was a patriot, real patriot, and he decided, he was a congressman from Ohio, and he decided to run for the Senate in Ohio. And so he ran against Howard Metzenbaum.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
There you
and
go.
Prior to the election in November, he went out for lunch, and he became very ill, and he died.
Well,
so
they killed him.
You can think whatever you want, but a lot of us have. It was very, very strange what happened. He was a very healthy man. He died.
Yeah.
So we lost him. But anyway, just think about that one, and people can Google John Ashbrook from Ohio. But let me go on here about these conservatives that are driving me nuts. In the beginning, Jeff, you said something about the fact all the teachers are being fired and the schools are being closed. Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. And about 15 years ago, people really thought I was crazy, cuckoo. I said, look, the whole purpose is to crash the public school system.
Oh, yeah.
Bring it down, and then people would say, well, what is going to happen to all the children? I said, they're all going to be out in the street. You're going to have the little kids, especially in the inner city. They won't have anywhere to go. They won't have any schools. They won't have any teachers. But don't worry, the corporations will scoop them up into their charter schools. And people said, oh, that's absolutely outrageous, Charlie. How could you? Well, okay. That is exactly what's happening now. That is exactly what's happening. Now, if you go, again, to American Deception and type the word failing grades into the search engine, and you will find very, very interesting information there. Back in the 90s, I got a hold of a video from Canada in regard to school choice. And the video is called Failing Grades. And it lists all of these so-called brilliant conservatives that we've all heard of, right? And they're in bed with these Canadian educators. And they're talking about the importance of school choice, vouchers, and charter schools, and also outcomes-based education, which is Skinner Pavlov. And they're recommending the use of this method and the use of charter schools, which are publicly funded private education.
Right.
That is taxation without representation. These are conservatives, folks, who put this whole plan together, and you'll find all the information, and they even talk about, they use the word effective schools with an E. That means Skinner. It works. Effective means it works. Workforce training. It's for workforce training. And they talk about effective schools in Russia. I have lots of very interesting documents in my book on the effective school movement and trips that will be made by major United States education change agents back and forth to Russia from South Carolina, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this whole issue of school choice, this is what I'm talking about. Be careful, even with homeschooling, because you might end up with William Bennett's virtual curriculum. If you end up with a charter school, which is a virtual curriculum that is a charter school, like as William Bennett is, your child will have to take the national test because charter schools are federally funded.
Hardly anybody knows this. It's not a very well known.
Well, listen,
I know
especially homeschoolers, and
right.
I hope they will know that the whole school choice issue was set up, the whole thing, to drag the schools down, to dumb them down, to dumb the teachers down. Everything was to deliberately crash the public school system so they could implement the Soviet Polytech school-to-work system through publicly funded charter schools.
Wow.
And that's it. And using Pavlov and Skinner. That means Fido sit. And before the editor and I closed the book down, we called the office that has the direct instruction method that was called for by the Bush administration and Bush 2 and et cetera for reading. And we called that office in Oregon and the Association for Direct Instruction, and we ordered the video to make sure we were right about it being dog training. And the video came, and we sat and watched it, and yes, it was absolutely correct. Hand signals, rewards, etc. This is a system that they were calling for on the other video called Failing Grades, all the conservatives, and in bed with Russia, and it's called Effective Schools with an E because it works. But your children are not animals. They have a soul, they have a conscience, they have a mind, they have little individual personalities.
Well, Skinner didn't think so.
No, but and neither does Obama, neither does Arne Duncan. The Secretary of Education, U.S. Secretary of Education, has called for paying students for good grades.
I couldn't believe that. That just blew me away. I should have known it was coming.
He's the one that signed the agreement with the Chinese. But after all, Ronald Reagan, he signed the agreement with Gorbachev. George Shultz signed it, and Shevardnadze on the other side. Now, but evidently, this particular agreement, Duncan did sign with the Chinese Minister of Education or whatever. Unbelievable. And if you could Google that, folks, on the internet. Do Google the agreement with China, because you'll see a video there. It's interesting, of this Chinese woman saying, "Well, it's understandable that they'd get such a wonderful Secretary of Education like Arne Duncan because President Obama has such a good relationship with him and all this and that,
Right.
And then, of course, the dissidents, Chinese dissidents, there are a few comments there about, come on, wait a minute. Our education system, they're talking about their own. It's nothing but brainwashing propaganda. It's been that ever since 1948 when the revolution took place. Go and read it. Marvelous stuff on at American Deception as well. The deliberate dumbing down of America. Look in the index for Edward Hunter, who wrote Brainwashing and Red China. And he was there. He was in Korea. He knew what the brainwashing was. In the early 70s, he went to a friend of mine's house in Montgomery County, Maryland, when they were fighting the changes in education at that time in Montgomery County, Maryland. He went to my friend's house and said, "This is incredible what you're talking about." And she didn't know it was Edward Hunter. And he asked for the books and the materials and all, and she lent them to him, and he came back to our house, and he said, "Mrs. Lawrence," by the way, her testimony is in my book too, Jacqueline Lawrence. He said, "Mrs. Lawrence, what you've got here is Chinese communist brainwashing." This is out of the mouth of the man who coined the word brainwashing, lived, was all involved with the soldiers in Korea, knew what had happened, etc. So, folks, this has been going on a long time.
Let me tell you, Charlotte, you are the preeminent authority in this field. We need your mind, your data, your book, your energy more than ever. So go ahead and get mad. I've never heard you sound better, more succinct in your words. So hang in there and keep at it. We can't give up, and we won't give up.
Well, thanks a lot, Jeff. I'm glad you're there, and I pray for this country, for our children, our grandchildren, and I pray for your listeners. Please get the book. It's a free download, too, on the internet.
Great. All right.
I mean,
will.
you don't even have to buy it. Just
Okay.
download it and read the stuff I'm telling you.
All right. Take care, my friend.